Hey guys, I'm Joey with the Bend International Church of Christ, and this video series is on the book of Philippians. We hope that these videos are small and bite-sized rather than a long sermon that's hard to pay attention to as you go throughout your busy day. Now, the book of Philippians is amazing. Paul wrote it from prison, and he wrote it to the church that he started in Philippi back in Acts chapter 16. What's unique about that is the people he reached out to in Acts chapter 16. They meet three characters, and these three characters are going to establish the church there. First, in Acts chapter 16, verse 14, it says, "One of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth. A rich CEO, fashionista. She's used to being in charge. She's very successful. In fact, she invites them all over to have dinner with her. And she's spiritual as well. She's studying the Bible by the river with a group of women there." Second character in verse 16. "Once when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future." The slave girl has been oppressed. She's demon-possessed. She's going about proclaiming, hey, these guys know the way to salvation. She's actually annoying them quite a lot. And Paul, even though he knows he'll probably be faced with imprisonment, decides to reach out to this slave girl, even though she didn't have a lot of usefulness in that immediate situation. In fact, Paul would end up in prison for reaching out to her. Your third character then becomes the Philippian jailer. A blue-collar Joe. He's devoted to his job, devoted to the Roman Empire. He's a jailer. In fact, he almost decides to take his life when Paul and Silas escape prison. That's how dedicated he was to his job. He wasn't thinking of his family. He wasn't thinking of God. He was thinking of himself and his job. Now, if Paul had never reached out to the slave girl, he never would have found the jailer. And then upon finding the jailer, Paul comes across somebody who identifies with their job as their state of being, as their destiny in life. That's who the jailer was. So when Paul writes Philippians, he writes to an audience that is redefining themselves. Lydia, the CEO, the slave girl, the Philippian jailer, all of them totally transform their lives. They make a radical commitment when they learn about the gospel of God's grace. And in this radical commitment, they reinvent themselves. They have a new identity and a new destiny. No longer would the jailer just be a jailer. No longer would Lydia just sell purple cloth. They would both become house church leaders. They would start the church in Philippi. They'd become mission team members. So Paul writes to this audience back in Philippians chapter 1 when he greets them as God's holy people. So Paul, writing to this church in Philippi, says in Philippians chapter 1, verse 3, "I thank my God every time I remember you, and all my prayers for all of you. I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now." You see, this slave girl and Lydia, this fashionista CEO, and this Philippian jailer, these ordinary people become Paul's partners in the gospel. Why? Because they partnered with him. They were in the trenches with him, confessing with him, praying with him, evangelizing with him. And for the slave girl, perhaps she didn't even join the church. Perhaps she didn't do any of those things. Perhaps she didn't have a lot of value in Paul's immediate situation, but he still loved her enough to reach out to her. And again, she led to the salvation of the jailer who came after her. Partners in the gospel. Isn't it great to partner in something? You know, Paul's writing to them, yearning for them, and he himself is in prison. He's not able to have a partner right now. And for some of us, we go to church and we don't take on partners. Sometimes I look around church in the pews and I know that there are people in this room with me who could benefit from discipleship, who could benefit from partnership. People who could break the chains of their sin with the help of partners. So I really challenge you, if you don't have that partner in the gospel, somebody to be in relationship with in the church, to seek out and find that partner. Now again, that's not a partner just in the work of the gospel, that's a partner in the grace of the gospel. And when somebody's down, when somebody's struggling, they need our love and our understanding to pull them up and out of that struggle. Now, we read on, and in verse 7, he says this, "It is right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart. And whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me." He had them in his heart, not just on his heart, like we might say today, "You're on my heart," but you are in my heart. Who is in your heart? in the church or outside of the church, those who are saved or those who are lost. And I think the great challenge here, when we consider who are our partners in the gospel and who is in our heart, well, we need to write up a list. Who are those 4 or 5 relationships that you have to be your partners in the gospel? And who are those 4 or 5 relationships outside of the church that you're reaching out to? Who do you have in your heart? That's the introduction to Philippians chapter 1. Paul rejoicing for this church in Philippi, for these characters, for this gospel community. A community that crosses socioeconomic lines from totally different regions, people that didn't look like each other or talk like each other, but they had a radical response to the gospel to become one. And that's our start to Philippians. Thanks for watching part 1 of our Philippians video series. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get more content from the Bend International Church of Christ. Thank you.